morning. This is the day that the Lord has made. We are glad and we're rejoicing therein. It is a good day to be alive. It is a good day to be in Formation Saturday with each and every one of you. Uh, we originally thought this was going to be a leadership conversation, but it's become an opportunity for us to just have conversation around several different subjects. And we're grateful for the opportunity to come and just have the conversation. This morning, we have a special guest with us, Dr. Frederick James. We've had the privilege of serving in the same convention, Alabama State Convention. Had an opportunity to work together. We're part of a fellowship of pastors right here in our community that's having conversations around these issues. And so I thought it would be befitting to invite him to come on and to spend some time with us. Pastor James, how are you, man?
I'm good, man. Good to see you.
Wonderful. Good to see you. Would you introduce yourself to us? Just let us know a little bit about yourself, and I'll start raising some questions in just a minute.
Okay. All right. Yes, sir. Certainly. Well, first, I want to say, before I introduce myself, I want to say thank you, Pastor Mickles, for just giving me the opportunity to be a part. It's always a blessing to be able to assist and play a role in the kingdom of God. And I praise the Lord for the work that you're doing there, man. You're doing some awesome work. So I
praise the Lord
for you. Yeah. But myself, my name is Frederick James, Dr. Frederick James. I have a PhD in microbiology. I studied viruses for my PhD work. So that gives me a different perspective on this global COVID pandemic. And some of the studies that I was doing were preliminary type of work that eventually leads to vaccine development. So I have some knowledge in that area. But in fact, a 2005 graduate of Meharry Medical College, Nashville, Tennessee. I'm a double HBCU grad, so I love my people. A few other things about myself. I now serve as instructor at Southern Union. I teach microbiology there. I'm also the pastor of the Pilgrim Baptist Church in Lynette, Alabama, and proud pastor. So just that's a little bit about myself. Husband, 3 kids. Just a blessing to be with you all today.
Wonderful, Doc. Wonderful, Doc. You followed Dr. Kennedy, correct?
Yes, sir. That's my daddy. Yes, sir.
Wow. Wow. Great scholar in the field.
Yes, sir. Great man. Yeah.
So what I want to do is I sent you 5 questions. I'm going to raise those 5 questions, and however you take it from those 5 questions. The reason why we're having this conversation, and I'll share this with you when we spoke privately. We're surveying our church, trying to get a feel for when we want to re-enter the sanctuary. And at the time of receiving the responses, 25% of our members said they were uncomfortable with receiving the vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I want to do with this session, I want to use this as an opportunity to try to inform and help us have a better understanding of what this is all about. And so our first question for today is, what is the vaccine? What is it really?
Okay, good. All right. Well, first, let me just talk about what vaccines are in general, and then I'll talk specifically about the COVID vaccine. Any vaccine is a way that we're using modern medicine to build your immune system. So I want you to understand, a vaccine is not a medicine that stays in your system. It builds your immune system and protects you against infections, specifically in this instance, viruses. So now what the vaccine does is it gives you the opportunity, or let me say it this, explain it this way. This is probably a good way. Most of us know that once you've had a certain infection like chickenpox, many of us are familiar with chickenpox, you don't get chickenpox a second time. You're not scared of it like you are initially. What the vaccine does is it gives you exposure to a virus or an infection without having the infection. So, in the same manner that most of us are not afraid of getting chickenpox, you also have that protection against any other infection. So, the way the vaccine works is it exposes your body to COVID. But let me say, the vaccine is not COVID. All right, we found ways to do it. It exposes your body to COVID so that you will have a protection against COVID. So you never have the infection, but you're protected against the infection. And let me say this about a vaccine. There's two things that a vaccine does, and there's often some confusion about this. The first thing that a vaccine does, which is the thing that you really want, is a vaccine prevents you from getting sick. But also, sometimes it's not that it prevents you from getting sick because all of our immune systems are different. Sometimes what the vaccine does, if it doesn't prevent you from getting sick, it makes the course of this sickness easier to manage. So, for instance, you may get sick from the vaccine, but you may recover in a week. Whereas without the vaccine, you may have been down for 2 months or you may lose your life. So the vaccine,
Wow.
and we miss that about vaccines. Yes, sir.
So receiving a vaccine, I may get sick, but I'm better equipped to handle the sickness.
Exactly.
My first time hearing that. Just to know, if you see me looking down, I'm taking notes as you talk. So
Yes,
it makes the sickness manageable.
yes, sir. And I say this for any vaccine, it's gonna make the progression of the disease better if you get sick. So it's and it almost just makes complete sense to get vaccinated. If it
Wow.
doesn't prevent you from getting sick, it makes you manage the sickness better.
Okay. So here's another question. So why do we need to take 2 shots?
All right.
I've actually even heard someone say that they were waiting for the vaccine to become advanced enough where there's only 1 shot.
Okay.
Why do we need the 2 shots?
All right. The 2 shots with the vaccine. There's several things in play here with the 2 shots. And let me say this: there's the Pfizer and the Moderna, which were the first two vaccines. You need 2 shots for that. Now there's a newer vaccine, the Johnson and Johnson, where you only need 1 shot. Here's the way our immune system works. We've heard of and familiar with antibodies. All right, antibodies are something your body produces, and antibodies stick to the virus and help you clear or get past and beyond the infection quicker. You need 2 shots because the way our antibodies work and our body works in terms of producing antibodies. There's what's called a primary and a secondary response, and this is and if it's too deep, tell me, break it down a little bit. But there's a primary and a secondary response with our immune system before we're fully protected.
Okay.
The first shot gives you the primary response, the exposure, and now there's partial protection with the first shot. They haven't released publicly the data on that, and I'm not sure where that data is. But the second shot is what gets you to that 94, 95% of never having symptoms from COVID. And that's one of the things also with the vaccine to understand. With those Pfizer and Moderna, it's in the 90 percentile of never having symptoms. But you got to think, there still is a 6 or so% of people that will have symptoms. It's just simple math. Now, it was never published and never talked about. So you need the 2 shots to build up your immunity, or to build up your immune system to where you're very well protected. 1 dose, I would imagine that it's a lower level of protection that's not efficient or not good enough. It doesn't have a good enough efficacy to really create this herd immunity, which we're looking for in order for our lives to get back to normal. Now, the Johnson and Johnson vaccine is slightly different. That's a 1 shot vaccine. It's a 1 shot vaccine, but it took longer to develop that vaccine. And it works in a different way. The Johnson and Johnson actually uses a virus. So when you get the Johnson and Johnson vaccine, and we can talk about this more, hopefully I'm not scaring anyone, but it uses a adenovirus, not a coronavirus, but an adenovirus. And with that vaccine, my understanding of science is, you probably would, if you got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, you probably wouldn't need another vaccine for a longer period of time versus the Pfizer and the Moderna. You might need to get another one next year. The Johnson & Johnson, you might be able to go 5 years. We don't know the date on that yet, and we don't know how that's going to play out. It's possible the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines, it could end up being, 5 or 10 years before you need another one, and you need 20 years for the Johnson & Johnson. But
Wow.
I just imagine, from what I know about the immune system and science, that with the Johnson & Johnson, if you choose the one, well, at this point, we don't have choices. I say
Yeah.
get the vaccine available. But I imagine the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, it would give a longer lasting immunity based upon the way it's delivered.
Wow. You actually just went into my next question and took care of it. Because the next question is, why are there so many brands and how are they different? And
Okay.
you talked to us about how Pfizer and Moderna are two shots, and how Johnson & Johnson is one shot. And because it took so much longer to develop the Johnson & Johnson, how it could have a longer lasting effect, even though it's not as efficacious as the two shots. Why is that? Or do we know that?
Well, there's some scientific rationale. Again, they're studying it, but the Pfizer and the Moderna are an mRNA vaccine, and with the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines, what the vaccine does is the vaccine is delivering a piece of messenger RNA into your body. All right. Now, here's the thing: our bodies make RNA anyway. Every cell in our body makes RNA. So hopefully you don't freak out and think it's something weird. And every cell in our body has to make RNA to survive. They just give us a unique piece of RNA that is unfamiliar to our cells, like the virus, and that's what gives us this protective immunity. That's also why I believe that the Pfizer and the Moderna have a higher 95 or so percent efficacy with it. But also with messenger RNA, let me say, RNA in our body is it's a temporary molecule. The RNA that our bodies make, it doesn't last long. So with the Pfizer and the Moderna, I would imagine a week, that messenger RNA is gone. So there's no more traces of what they, I'm going to say it in the way, people talk on the street. There's no more traces of what they put in you. It's gone. But the Johnson & Johnson is actually giving you a virus, and I'll touch on the adenovirus. Adenoviruses is a group or a family of viruses that we all have come in contact with. There's some viruses that are just so ubiquitous, that are just spread everywhere. We've all had an adenovirus infection, and with the adenovirus, most of us don't even get sick. It's just came in contact with. So they take a harmless adenovirus that most people have already seen. So your immune system's already protected against the adenovirus, and they use that to give you a piece of the COVID, all right, the SARS virus, and that's why I believe that it will have a longer lasting immunity, because with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, it's a more natural course. It's not natural because it's a vaccine, but it mimics the natural process of the body more than the messenger RNA Pfizer and Moderna vaccines.
Wow. So we've already discussed this next question in part, but I still want to raise it so that we can make sure we're getting understanding. So I can still get the virus after getting the vaccine, but because I've already been exposed, my body's able to manage it better, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So
go ahead. No. Go ahead. It's Pastor Michaels.
We need the info, Doc.
Well, no, I was going to let you pose you go, but I was just going to say, but one thing I want to add in that question there is the vaccines, the messenger RNA especially, there's no way you'll get COVID from the vaccine. Often we say, I got COVID from the vaccine, or we say I got the flu from the flu vaccine. You don't get the flu from the flu vaccine. Think about this, as I was talking about primary and secondary immune response. Your primary immune response, it usually takes about 2 weeks for that to kick in. That's partial protection. Your secondary immune response, it takes another 2 weeks. You hear they're saying now, after your second shot, you still got about 2 weeks for you fully protected. It takes another 2 weeks for that to kick in. So if you got the flu vaccine on, say, October 1, and then you got the flu on October 15, that's because you weren't fully protected. You came in contact with someone that gave you the flu. And the same for the coronavirus, for the most part. If the vaccine is going to protect you and prevent you from getting COVID, many people will say, well, I got the vaccine last week and now I got COVID. I got COVID from the vaccine. You didn't get COVID from the vaccine. Your immune system didn't have time to develop and build up the immunity. So you got COVID from someone else that you came in contact with. Now, if it's 6 months later after the vaccine and you get COVID, then what happened is the vaccine itself uh, was not efficacious enough to prevent you from getting COVID. But when we're talking in that 1 month time period, the vaccine gave it to me. That is a misnomer because our immune system hasn't had time to kick in.
Wow. Okay. That's good. That's good information. So even once I get the vaccine, I still need to be careful.
Yes.
I still need to wear my mask. I still need to practice my social distancing. I still need my hand sanitizer.
Yes. And I say that because we've all heard about the variants that are going on. For the most part, the vaccines will protect you against the variants because it's the same virus.
Okay.
But there's a possibility if we decided, if people were careless, didn't wear masks, didn't use hand sanitizer, didn't social distance, even after being fully vaccinated. If we're not careful, there's a possibility that we could create variants. And there's a possibility that it would create a variant that would find a way around the vaccine. But the more we protect ourselves with the vaccine, the less likely that we're going to develop variants.
Oh, okay. Okay. That's good information. Um, I'm going. I'm gonna say that after I'll give this final question that we pre-prepared for. So I'm still on the fence about getting the vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
Convince me.
Mm-hmm.
Why should I get the vaccine? Why should I go get the shot? I I really want to make an informed decision. Why should I get the COVID-19 vaccine?
Okay. We should all get the COVID-19 vaccine because it's not only about us, it's about everyone else. When I say it's not only about us, it's about everyone else. Consider this, and we've said this saying often before. You've heard the saying, is that a chain is only as strong as its what? Its weakest link. And so in your church, and I say the same thing to individuals in my church, our church is only as strong as the weakest link. And if we have individuals and members who are choosing not to get the vaccine, they in the situation of this pandemic, they position themselves as it relates to the health of the church. I'm not talking about service. I have some folks also that have issues with the vaccine, and I'm having conversation, not pushing or forcing, but I'm just going to continue talking and having conversation with them. But you position yourself to be the weakest link as it relates to the health of your church. And consider what we know about our immune systems. Our immune systems change over time. So if you're the weakest link and there is a senior or a visitor that comes to your church, you're being the weakest link. Or let me also say this. When you do not have the vaccine, there's the possibility that you could be a carrier for the virus and not know that you have the virus. And let me add something else, Pastor Mickles. You may not be aware of this, and hopefully this will shed some more light on with your congregation. I had COVID. All right.
Wow.
I had COVID in March of last year. So it's about a year for me. Actually, probably about, March 20th would be a year to the day I had the positive test. So
today is March 20th.
It's March 20th. So 1 year today, I tested positive for COVID. Now I share that with you all because I got COVID from church. I just want to be real. It was in church, and myself and another individual shared the same microphone. This individual had no symptoms. This individual, we talked during that week when I told him I was positive, and he told me he was in contact with someone who was positive, but he didn't know at that time because last March we didn't know. We really didn't know. And so he was fine the whole time. But check this out. I was in contact with him. His wife was in contact with him. And another preacher was in contact with him. We were all in the same group. Guess what? The three of us were all positive, and one of them ended up on the respirator for about 2 weeks.
Wow.
Completely fine. So I want us to see that because there are people, and this is in the case of any virus, there are people that are carriers without symptom. So back to the question of why should you get vaccinated? It's very possible you could be a carrier without symptoms. It happened to me. And I have the knowledge of virology and immunology, and it happened to me. Same thing can happen in our churches. So if you don't want to get vaccinated for your own protection, you should vaccinate yourself for the protection of others.
Wow. That's very powerful that's something to seriously consider. We're going to take about 5 more minutes before we wrap this. I appreciate you spending some time with us. Changing hats from instructor, viral, PhD to pastor. So, speaking as a pastor to a pastor in congregation, how do you see the church moving forward a year later? This tomorrow would be a year since our last service in the sanctuary. So we've been in the parking lot almost. We've been in the parking lot. May will make a year. We haven't made any plans to go back in. But how do you see church moving forward, making adjustments in light of what we've gone through in the last 365?
Wow. Well, I say this, start out by this. We haven't been back in our church it's 1 year this coming Sunday. Yeah, also. So like yourself, we've had parking lot, park and praise, and some virtual services is what we've done. But I think the church, let me say it this way, switching hats. Whenever God permits and allows difficulty of this nature, because this is a nature where it did not only affect the world, it also affected the church. And I think whenever God allows difficulty in that nature, it's time for us to at least raise up our heads from the manner that we used to do things and consider, is this a time for change or transition? And so I say that to say, I think that the church moving forward, there's some things we'll have to transition and consider. Is it my preference, or is it really for his glory?
Oh, wow.
And I think there's some things as it relates to church that we'll have to evaluate. I just preferred for this to be done this way, but out of the safety of others, let's do this. Let's change what we do for his glory. And I think some of those, that's going to be some of the things that we're going to have to consider. And every church worships and has different traditions. There's certain ways that Pilgrim does things. And there's some traditions that I know we'll have to discourage. One of the things, tradition at Pilgrim is after church, a pastor would come down, was hugging everybody, shaking hands. That was just what we did. And that's going to hurt my heart. Yeah. That I won't be able to, hug and touch and greet and take a moment and speak to everyone, because as long as I've been at Pilgrim, that's been the tradition. And it's a good tradition. But I have to consider I'm in contact with everybody if I do that.
That's right.
And if I'm in contact with everybody, do I set myself up to infect, Mother Johnson or Mother so-and-so or a deacon who's 90-something years old because he wants to come by and shake my hand?
That's right. That's right.
So there's some things that I think will have to shift, but I think every church pastor and leadership have to take time to think about some things. Now, we may get back to it, in time, but in the immediate future, there's some things that I think out of the safety and I say this, protecting the people is I think is one of the greatest ways a pastor can glorify God. I had some conversations with pastors early in the pandemic, and even myself. And I had to have this conversation with myself actually to help me shut the doors. I'm gonna be a little transparent. You know, having a PhD in virology, when I was watching the news, seeing the pandemic coming, because I was using it as a lesson in class, I was thinking of ways to outsmart it. I'm gonna be honest. I was like, I ain't shutting down because you know what? I'm gonna do this, and I know how to. I was trying to outsmart it. But I say that to say this, that well, first there's some things when it's the hand of God, there's some things you're just not going to outsmart, and we have to have enough. You know, there's some things that we just gonna have to change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love standing at that back door. That's my favorite part of the worship.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's my favorite part of the worship. I tell them all the time, even in the parking lot, my wife and I stand at the edge of the parking lot and wave as they drive off. That's my favorite part of the worship. But when we come back into the sanctuary, there's going to be some changes. You know, I'm looking at one now. Our church has purchased the thermometers to mount up on the wall, you know, so that when we come in, that'll be available. We're going to install hand sanitizing units all over the building.
Okay.
You know, so we're making preparation.
Now, Pastor, I got to interrupt because you know I'm learning from you now. When you get a chance, shoot me the information about that thermometer on the wall. We've purchased some thermometers, but that's I like that.
And what it does is it has a sensor, and you stand in front of it. It'll take your temperature and put your temperature up on the screen. So no, you don't have to reach out to any of that. It's mountable and it has a stand as well. Okay. So I'll shoot you that information.
Yeah, I need that.
Yeah, and so we're making preparation for things like that. We're planning for one way in, one way out traffic. You know, and even though we're not setting a date yet, we're starting to think through it and make preparations for that. And I appreciate you for your time. I appreciate you for sharing with us and helping us to come to greater understanding so that we can make some better decisions. And I understand you've already been vaccinated, correct?
Yes, sir. I've received both doses of the Pfizer vaccine.
Wow. I'm scheduled to receive my first shot on Monday. So I'll have both Pfizer shots by the second Sunday in April.
Okay, good. Now I share this with me for my vaccine. There was relatively no symptoms except fatigue. I was just tired.
That's right.
For during the next day. So Pastor, hey, if you can slow down and you know.
Thankfully, it's on my Sabbath day.
Oh, okay. Good.
So I'll be able to sit down and rest and recover.
Okay.
Any final remarks you want to share with us before we shut this down, Pastor?
I think it's important to get vaccinated, and that's from my heart to the heart of all of your people, all of your leaders. And I just say, Beulah, man, I love you, Pastor. Hey, just in the contact I've had, man, I want to tell you, keep loving your pastor. Y'all have an awesome man of God. Just in the you know the limited interaction I've had with him. So y'all are doing a great work, a good work, and Beulah, keep loving your pastor.
Wonderful. And we're gonna put a replay of this up probably later this afternoon so that some more people can get on and see it. We thank you so much for sharing your expertise, your knowledge with us. GB will be in the parking lot in the morning at 10 a.m. for worship. And until then, I love y'all. Y'all have a great Saturday. Peace.